to latch on to, of course, is the politics. You know, thinking back as I was reading the book, I was with the Department of Justice at the beginning of this unfortunate odyssey, and I left right around November of 06. You know, I was one of them at that time. And to be honest with you, you know, the river, and David, Mr. Fisher will agree, at times can be very, very narrow, and at times can be very wide. And it was wide for me in the sense, at least, that I was not paying attention very much to this prosecution. I had plenty of prosecutions of my own to worry about. But the one thing that we were confronted with as I was leaving, and something I saw as soon as I jumped to the other side, was how the intense focus on immigration investigations, immigration prosecutions, was going to yield unfortunate results like this. Is that me? Let me explain. After 9/11, Congress, the White House, the Justice Department concluded that illegal immigration had become a national security problem. We all remember anything that became a national security problem had money thrown at it en masse. And so what happened? Well, we merged the Customs and Immigration, INS and Customs, and into the Department of Homeland Security. The Department of Homeland Security had more money than they knew what to do with. People like Paul Chambers, the lead agent in this case, who was a customs agent, all of a sudden was responsible for enforcing and investigating immigration laws, with which, by the way, he had almost no familiarity. And this is the product you get. And it's the push of politics, in a very real sense, that created this problem. So what do? Well, this is something that our lawmakers here in Columbus and in Washington have been encouraged to do for a long time to no avail, and that is slow down with the knee-jerk reactions. Stop throwing money and resources at problems until you've got a decent idea of how to address and potentially solve them.
Michael?
I think I go back to the comment that I made earlier. I think it all starts in the federal system with the United States Attorney himself or herself. And I think it's very, very critical that the person that is identified by the United States Senator of the party of the President from that particular state have a very, very good screening body in place to be able to screen those individuals. They make a recommendation then, and that goes to the White House. And my understanding is there's a little bit of vetting that goes on there now, and then generally they go to the Senate. There are a lot of wonderful people that are very well qualified to be United States Attorney. However, you need to also make sure that the United States Attorney is somebody that has life experience. Not just in the law, but possibly even outside the law before they went to law school. Someone that's been in a situation where they have to make really important decisions, that are capable of making those decisions, that are capable of exercising the discretion of being the United States Attorney. Every U.S. attorney ought to understand, or every U.S. attorney candidate ought to understand that the power to indict is the power to destroy, if not properly. And I think that, you know, our system has begun to fail us in that regard. I'm certainly not taking pot shots at any one U.S. attorney, but I think the whole process of identifying from a particular state or from a particular judicial district who that person is being shortcutted, where it used to be a very long vetting process, and I think it was a better process, quite frankly. I knew it took some time. I think now it's all in a big rush to make sure that we get the president's person in place as quickly as possible. And I certainly understand that. I have no problem with the fact that the president should have his or her U.S. attorney in place, but I think the process has failed us. This is not a U.S. attorney, but one only has to look at what happened with Mike Nifong down in North Carolina to see what happens when you elect, in that particular case, a district attorney that doesn't have the common sense to make proper decisions. So if there were anything I would push to improve, it would be the process that we employ to identify candidates for the White House for the United States Attorney, because it's all about leadership, and that all starts from the top. I really believe in this case, and I really, truly do. I don't know any of the players, but I think that the U.S. Attorney, whoever that is, sets the tenor for that office, and I'm not sure, based on John's book, whether or not the U.S. Attorney was engaged really with this case, or to what extent he or she was engaged. I think that's a travesty. And so that's the one thing that I think I would work on.
I think both of you are mentioning problems where they probably don't have a systematic fix. You can't legislate particular political behavior. You can't really legislate a personnel process, I think, for the president, realistically. Probably, let me know what you think, so to somehow increase the transparency and accountability in a, let's call it in the fashion that we have here, where there's like a taxpayer association that watches every dime that falls on the floor with state government. That there's reporters who chase down public integrity corruption and write stories about it. It seems like the prosecutorial process set off away from these areas that we're more used to as lay people or sophisticated lay people or professionals. Doesn't seem to get a lot of scrutiny afterwards in a Buckeye Institute, Heritage Foundation, Cato Institute sense. Is that fair, that perhaps there is a need for private citizen vigilance to be somehow focused on this general area to keep watch of these problems? Is that something that we could follow up on?
I think that's a fair statement. We elect our prosecuting attorneys, and so every 4 years there's an opportunity for the citizens to go ahead and say, yes, did a good job, didn't do a good job, you're in or you're out. With a U.S. attorney, once you've been nominated and once you've been confirmed by the United States Senate, it's only the president that can jerk your commission, so to speak, okay? So I would think that's why it's so important up front in that process that we get the right people in place. So to the extent there could be citizens groups that are involved, or they continue to follow that process to make sure that we improve the process, to make sure that we have the very finest individuals that are confirmed by the United States Senate to serve in that position. I don't think there's any question that probably the most dominant role and position in the American criminal justice system today is the U.S. Attorney. I mean, you talk about someone that is not elected, that is merely appointed, that wields the amount of influence that he or she does. There's very, very few people that have that kind of authority.
Help me out, and we'll get back to you for your last solution. The grand jury process, as a layperson, isn't that supposed to be the check and balance? But as a layperson, again, I hear the ham sandwich, routine. I'm like going, can that be strengthened?
I think the grand jury system is a good system. I think it's how it's employed, how it's used by the people, the assistant U.S. attorneys and the U.S. attorneys. And again, I want to say it's been my experience that it is used as a screening body to determine whether or not this case actually merits an indictment, what the problems with the case are. It's when you have that rogue U.S. attorney or rogue assistant U.S. attorney or whomever that decides that I want to use that grand jury for a rubber stamp that you've got a problem. So for me, it's not the grand jury system. I think the system is fine. It's the people that we may have in place.
Professor.
I want to pick up on those points, and then I'll get to my solution. One reason why I think that having books like John's, having the Buckeye Institute run sessions like this is very salient to
watch of these problems. Is that something that we could follow up on?
I think that's a fair statement, particularly in the federal system. In the state system, of course, here in Ohio, we elect our prosecuting attorneys, and so every 4 years, there's an opportunity for the citizens